woman wrapped in a worn coat is mistaken for homeless outside a bustling grocery store on Christmas Eve. Security tries to force her away as judgmental onlookers whisper. But when a Navy SEAL veteran spots a faded Christmas Eve mission patch on her sleeve, one only a handful of people in the world ever earned, everything changes. What follows is a revelation of sacrifice, forgotten honor, and a moment of public redemption that no one expected. Before we begin, where are you watching from today? And before we dive into this emotional journey, please subscribe for more stories that honor the quiet heroes walking among us. The confrontation had already begun when the viewer enters the moment. Raw, unfiltered, morally charged. A voice cut sharply across the winter air. "Mom, you can't sit here. You're disturbing customers." Cold wind clawed through the parking lot of Maple Ridge Market, swirling grit and pine needles around a woman crouched beside a shopping cart. Her coat, a frayed, colorless thing, hung loosely from her shoulders, and her hands trembled as she clutched a small canvas backpack. Security stood over her, towering, irritated, breath fogging out like steam from a restless engine. People watched but didn't intervene. Some whispered. Some judged silently, the kind of stiff, uncomfortable glances people give when they're certain they're in the right, and equally certain they want nothing to do with the situation. The woman didn't lift her face. She merely tightened her grip on the straps of her pack, knuckles whitening, as though everything she owned, perhaps everything she remembered, was inside it. "What did I tell you?" the guard pressed. "This property isn't a shelter." Another voice drifted from the crowd, tinged with embarrassment disguised as irritation. "She's been circling the lot since morning." "Poor thing, but still, kids are around. It's Christmas Eve." The woman inhaled sharply, as though their words scraped the inside of her lungs. Her boots, mud-caked, split at the seams, shifted lightly against the cold pavement. She seemed to brace herself for something unseen, as though the world had grown used to pushing her aside, and she had grown used to being pushed. But there was one detail, small, nearly invisible, that caught the eye of someone else in the parking lot. Not the coat, not the backpack, not the lowered gaze or trembling hands. It was the patch, barely stitched onto her sleeve, half torn, washed into muted colors by years of use, but unmistakable to anyone who had bled for the same flag. A circular emblem, faded midnight blue and silver. A snowflake embedded behind a pair of crossed wings. Below it, stitched in ghostly thread almost too worn to read, EV-47. Only a handful of people in the world knew what that patch meant. And one of them, Michael Rourke, retired Navy SEAL, scarred, quiet, carrying the weight of 1,000 memories, had just stepped out of his truck. He froze mid-stride, heart jolting in his chest with a kind of recognition that felt like electricity threading through bone. He knew that patch. He knew the mission. And he knew the people who wore it. His boots crunched over the ice. He moved slowly, instinctively reading the scene the way soldiers read danger. The guard's closing posture, the woman shrinking inward, the bystanders pulling back, nobody willing to step in. A surge of something old and familiar stirred in him, that quiet, rising sense of injustice. The one that had guided him through cities, swallowing their own shadows, and deserts breathing fire. But this wasn't a battlefield, at least not one anyone else could see. The woman whispered something, inaudible beneath the restless wind, and held her pack tighter, as though the world might tear it away. Her coat lifted slightly with the motion, and he spotted the second thing. A thin chain around her neck, slipping free for only a breath before tucking itself back beneath fabric. Dog tags, worn nearly smooth. The guard crossed his arms beside her. "Stand up. You can't stay here." I'm not trying to cause trouble," she murmured, her voice brittle as tired glass. "You already are." Michael felt something in his chest tighten. He had seen cruelty. He had seen arrogance. But there was something deeply wrong about this moment. Something out of balance, like humanity itself had taken a step backward. And the patch vibrated in his memory like a distant echo of a night that changed everything. He walked closer. Not fast, not imposing. Just present enough to shift the invisible energy swirling around the troubled space. The guard noticed him. "Sir, is there something you need?" Michael didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained on the woman. On the way she tried and failed to lift herself from the ground. On the pain etched between breaths. on the quiet humility that radiated from her like a broken light still trying to shine. A gust of December wind spun across the pavement, carrying with it the scent of roasted chestnuts from a street cart and the faint jingle of a Salvation Army bell somewhere nearby. Christmas Eve. A night filled with stories about shelter, about compassion, about humble beginnings and second chances. And yet here she was, dismissed like refuse, as though her presence contaminated the holiday spirit rather than embodying it. Michael crouched beside her, lowering himself deliberately so that she didn't feel looked down upon. Her eyes rose hesitantly. For the first time he saw her face, tired, pale from cold, streaked with windburn but structured with unmistakable strength. There was something else too. A flicker behind her expression, like someone trapped between remembering and forgetting. He spoke quietly. "You wore that patch." A breath escaped her lips, fragile and disbelieving. Her fingers tightened reflexively around her pack, and for a moment she looked ready to run. "No one remembers that patch," she whispered. "No one should." Her voice carried weight, not shame but memory. The kind that clings to bone. Michael's mind flickered back to a different time, a different world, EV-47, a mission buried under layers of redacted files, nighttime snowstorms, and a young team who had gone into the mountains in search of a downed reconnaissance craft holding intel that could have ignited chaos across continents. 6 went in. 3 came out. He had never forgotten the faces of the missing. He had never forgotten the one person who didn't make it back on the rescue run. The medic, the one whose courage in the blizzard kept the others alive. The one reported MIA until the storm buried all evidence. He swallowed hard. "You're supposed to be dead." She gave a broken smile that held both irony and exhaustion. "A lot of things are supposed to be." The guard interrupted, irritation spiking. "Sir, if you're encouraging her to stay, that's not helping." Michael didn't look up. He didn't need to. A quote formed in his mind, one he had carried since the night he left the service. "Some people shout to prove strength. Others stay silent because they've already proven it." He rose slowly, turning just enough so the guard could see the look in his eyes. Calm, steady, unmovable. A look forged in places colder and darker than this parking lot could ever be. "Do you have any idea who she is?" Michael asked quietly. The guard scoffed. "A trespasser. A homeless." Michael's expression sharpened, not angry, but filled with a gravity that silenced the guard mid-sentence. "She is a veteran," he said. "And not just any veteran. She earned a Christmas Eve patch that most people in this country will never even hear about." Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. A woman clutching grocery bags paused. A young father holding a toddler adjusted his stance. People turned, uncomfortable now, not with her, but with themselves. The woman on the pavement lowered her gaze again, as though she wished the world would fold her back into silence. Michael stepped closer to her once more. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She opened her mouth, hesitated, then closed it again. Names come easily to those who feel they belong somewhere. But when you've lived on society's edges long enough, your name can become a fragile relic. Something you fear someone might take or twist or forget. "Lena," she finally whispered. "My name is Lena Hayes." He froze at the sound of it. He had known a Hayes. A Captain Miles Hayes. A man who had died on EV-47. A man whose last words were a promise that he'd get back to his sister. A tremor of recognition passed through his chest. He murmured. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I know. They told me he didn't make it back." Her voice cracked. "They told me I was lucky to survive. But I didn't feel lucky. Not then, not after." The guard shifted uneasily, suddenly aware that something sacred was unfolding and he had been moments away from trampling it. Michael slowly extended his hand. Not forcefully, not demanding, but offering. "Lena, why are you out here?" She inhaled, eyes closing briefly as though gathering memories that scattered like snowflakes just out of reach. "It's a long story," she whispered. "We've got time," he replied, and so she told part of it, short fragments, spoken with that fragile quietness belonging to those who have endured more than they ever shared. She told him about the blast that separated her from the team, the days wandering in the freezing dark, the medevac that found her half-conscious, the months of rehabilitation where her mind blurred between nightmares and waking confusion. She told him about the memory lapses, the disorientation, The discharge papers she barely understood. The life that unraveled slowly, thread by thread, until she drifted from job to job, state to state, searching for a place where her name still meant something. "I'm not homeless," she said softly. "I just don't have anywhere to be tonight." Michael felt a pressure rise behind his ribs, the raw truth of it, the injustice. This, on Christmas Eve, a night when people were supposed to see each other through kinder eyes. The wind swept through again, lifting her coat enough to reveal the full patch. In that moment, it was as though the night itself recognized her. He spoke quietly, almost reverently. "That patch, it's a sign of a promise kept. No one left behind." Lena's eyes glistened. "Except me." Silence spread across the parking lot, heavy enough that even the wind seemed to still. Michael took a breath, his stance firming. No, not anymore. Something shifted. A subtle but powerful echo, as though an unseen line had been crossed. A new tension filled the air, not the tension of conflict, but of a story pivoting into something deeper. Something about to change everything, and it began with a single, deliberate gesture. Michael reaching into his jacket pocket, retrieving something small, metallic, and unmistakably official, a seal challenge coin, one engraved with the numbers of the EV-47 team. He pressed it into her hand. The standers leaned in, sensing the weight of what was unfolding. Lena's fingers curled around the coin, and a tremor passed through her body. A tremor of recognition, of revival, of memory being pulled from the fog. "You weren't forgotten," he said quietly. "Not by the ones who were there. Not by me." Her breath hitched. And as the wind curled around them, something ancient and sacred passed between the two veterans. Something no bystander could fully understand, but everyone could feel. And then, just as the moment reached its quiet peak, a familiar voice emerged from the growing crowd, a voice Michael hadn't heard in years. "Mike, is that you?" He stiffened. That voice belonged to another EV-47 survivor. Someone who should have been halfway across the country. And he was walking toward them now, eyes locked on Lena, face draining of color. The twist was beginning. The man threading through the crowd moved with a limp softened by time, but made visible by old injuries that never fully surrendered. He wore a worn brown jacket and a beanie tugged low, his breath rising in thin clouds. But nothing about him was ordinary. Not to Michael. It was Nolan Price, corpsman survivor of EV-47. The last voice heard on the mission radio before the storm sealed off the mountain. Michael stared, stunned. "Nolan, what are you doing here?" Nolan didn't answer. His eyes were fixed entirely on Lena, widening with dawning recognition. The kind that sinks through a person's core like a weight dropped into deep water. He stopped 3 feet from her, breath catching. "No," he whispered. "No, it can't be. Hayes?" Lena stiffened, her posture shrinking into caution. It had been years since she knew safety in a familiar voice. Nolan lowered himself to one knee, not caring that the cold pavement bit into his joints. His hands trembled. "Lena Hayes," he breathed, voice thick with emotion. We thought we lost you." Her lips parted. "Corpsman Price." Hearing the old title brokenly escape, her lips fractured whatever defenses Nolan still carried. Tears spilled, unhidden, tracing the rugged lines of a man who had once held dying teammates in his arms and survived every nightmare except guilt. "I tried to get to you," he said. "We all did. God, we tried. When the ridge collapsed, when the snow buried the ravine, I spent hours digging with my bare hands. I thought we were pulling you out. I thought we..." His voice cracked, splintering into raw truth. There, in a grocery store parking lot on Christmas Eve, two veterans who had once survived death together met again. Not in a heroic battlefield reunion, but in a moment of forgotten humanity and public judgment. And the world around them, once cold and indifferent, grew still. Lena's eyes welled. "It wasn't your fault," she whispered. "I woke up in a medevac in another sector. They said no one had reported me missing. That the mission record listed me as unaccounted, but no teams were assigned to search further after the avalanche blocked the ridge." Nolan bowed his head, pain tightening his jaw. "They told us you were gone. By the time we returned months later, the hill was thawed out. The debris had moved. There was no trace. We fought to keep your file open. They shut it anyway." She inhaled sharply as if absorbing a truth she had long feared but never confirmed. Michael stepped closer, voice steady but low. "We never forgot you. And we didn't stop saying your name. A tear slid down Lena's cheek, caught by the wind before it reached her jaw. The guard who had been ready to eject her now stood frozen, shame spreading up his neck like wildfire. The onlookers shifted, unease morphing into something else. Something like humility. A mother nudged her teenage son, whispering for him to pay attention. An older man lifted his hat instinctively, a gesture of respect he didn't fully understand yet. A little girl tugged her father's coat and asked, "Daddy, is she a hero?" And the father, in the simple, reverent tone of someone finally seeing clearly, replied, "Yes, she is." For Lena, years of wandering, of memory loss, of disappearing within the cracks of society, seemed to fold into a single realization. People could forget. Systems could fail. But truth had a way of finding its way back home. Nolan rose slowly, helping her to her feet with a tenderness that only those who have survived hell together understand. Her legs trembled, not just from cold but from the sudden gravity of being truly seen. "You're coming with us," Nolan said. "No more nights alone. Not ever again." But Lena shook her head gently. "I don't want pity." Michael stepped forward, voice soft yet unyielding. "This isn't pity. This is belonging." The line struck her like a warm rush through frozen veins. Belonging, something she had lost long before she lost her home. Michael continued, his words like steady lantern light guiding her out of darkness. "You carried people through a storm that should have killed every one of us. You kept the team alive until help arrived. You've earned more than a patch. You earned a place in history." Nolan added, voice thick with emotion. "History just took too damn long to catch up." Lena swallowed hard. Her fingers still clutched the CL Challenge coin Michael had given her moments earlier. She held it to her heart, feeling the metal warm slowly against her skin. A whisper escaped her lips, a quote spoken to no one in particular. Yet it drifted through the air like sacred truth. "Honor isn't a medal. It's what you carry when no one is looking." Michael nodded. "And some of us carry it so long, the world forgets to look altogether." His gaze swept the crowd. Once judgmental, now humbled. Then something unexpected happened. A man in the crowd removed his winter cap and held it against his chest. A woman placed a hand over her heart. Teenage boy lowered his head. One by one, instinctively, silently, the crowd assumed a stance of respect. Not formal, not military, but deeply human. It was not about protocol, it was about recognition. Recognition of someone who had been invisible too long. Lena's hands trembled at her sides. She wasn't used to attention. Not the kind that acknowledged her worth rather than her struggle. Nolan glanced at the sky, exhaling shakily. "Christmas Eve," he murmured. "The night we lost you, and the night we got you back." But Lena shook her head. "You didn't lose me. I just got stuck, lost in the spaces between memories." Michael offered a rare, softened smile. "Well, we found you now." A long silence followed, not empty, full. Full of years, of pain, of survival, of the stunned realization that fate had circled back around. Finally Michael turned to the guard, whose eyes glistened with guilt. "I think it's time she came inside," Michael said gently. "Don't you?" The guard swallowed hard, voice tight. "Yes, of course. She's welcome here." I'm sorry." Lena met his eyes, offering a small nod of forgiveness that surprised even her. "It's okay," she said softly. "Sometimes people only see what life has taken from someone, not what they've given." The line hit everyone around her. It was the kind of sentence that settled into the bones, the kind of truth people would repeat later, long after the moment passed. Inside the store, warmth enveloped her like a long-lost embrace. Customers stepped aside, respectful, allowing her space not out of fear but awareness. Michael grabbed a cart and began filling it. Warm blankets, hot food, a thick coat, gloves, a prepaid phone. Anything that whispered safety and care. Nolan added more: medication, protein shakes, first aid supplies. His movements were purposeful, precise, reflecting a medic's instinct to rebuild what life had broken. Lena watched, overwhelmed, tears dripping freely now. You don't have to do all this." Michael looked at her gently. "We're not doing it because we have to. We're doing it because you deserve it." She covered her mouth with her hand, overcome. When they reached the checkout, the crowd behind them grew. People quietly added items to the cart: thermal boots, gift cards, a handwritten note from a stranger that read, "You are seen." When they stepped back outside, the sky was beginning to snow. A soft, drifting curtain of white. the kind that made the world quieter, softer, more forgiving. Nolan glanced at the falling flakes. Just like that night, he whispered. But Lena shook her head. No. This time it feels warm. And then, in the soft glow of Christmas Eve snowfall, something extraordinary happened. Michael lifted his voice just enough for those nearby to hear. She is Lena Hayes, combat medic, survivor of EV-47. She is a hero who walked through hell and kept moving, even when no one was walking with her. Silence fell again, reverent, respectful. Then applause began. Not loud, not rowdy, gentle, like snow falling, like gratitude settling on the shoulders of someone who had carried more than her share. Lena stood in the center of it all, trembling in disbelief. She had spent years fading from the world's memory, and now the world, at least this small corner of it, was giving that memory back. Michael stepped beside her. You ready to go home? Lena's breath caught. I don't know where home is anymore. Nolan touched her shoulder gently. We do, he said. And you're coming with us. Your family. Family. A word she hadn't felt connected to since her brother's last breaths on that cold mountain. The snow thickened around them, blanketing the world in quiet peace as the three veterans walked toward Michael's truck. Three survivors of a mission that had tried to erase one of them, now reunited by fate, honor, and the small miracle of a forgotten patch. As they reached the truck, Lena paused, staring at the sky. She whispered a final line, soft, but strong, like a vow renewed. Sometimes the world finds you again, when you're finally ready to be found. Michael and Nolan exchanged a glance, one of awe, relief, and a brotherhood reforged. Together, they helped her inside. Together, they drove her toward warmth, safety, and a new beginning. And behind them, in the parking lot where judgment had once overshadowed compassion, the snowfall erased the footprints of that long, cold night, leaving only the memory of a moment when a forgotten hero finally came home. The storyteller's voice returned, soft and thoughtful. Some heroes don't wear uniforms forever. Some walk among us unseen, carrying battles the world will never hear about. And sometimes, all it takes to change a life is to look a little closer. Share your thoughts below, and if this story touched you, subscribe for more stories that honor the silent strength of those who've sacrificed more than we know. Thank you for watching, and wherever you are tonight, may you see the unseen heroes around you.